really looking forward to talking with you all. For those of you who I don't know, which there's actually several in here that I haven't met before, my name is Justin Slagle. I'm the co-founder and CEO of the Partner Masters. I just spent the last 10.5 years of my career at Microsoft in the partner organization supporting partners just like you. I'm also a former founder of the IAMCP SoCal chapter back in 2009. So this is where my roots came from as a partner before I sold my business and went to Microsoft, and now starting all over and doing it again. But I'm really honored today. Thank you for having us to be able to have this conversation. And Jonathan, do you mind if we take the presentation down and we can just have a conversation with everyone?
Absolutely. Sorry about
that. But I'm honored today because of a couple of reasons. One, I really appreciate being back with IMCP, but also because we're going to have a conversation with two of my favorite people and probably two of the smartest people that I've ever met, and Dr. Lisa Palmer around artificial intelligence, and Matt Soseman, my co-founder of the Partner Masters, around security and cybersecurity. So throughout this, if you guys have some questions, feel free to put them into the chat. But the idea of this, these are probably the two hottest topics in all of IT right now. So Matt, Lisa, maybe I give you, the two of you, just a chance to introduce yourself. Ladies first. Dr. Lisa, would you like to say hi and tell everyone a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Hello, everyone. I'm excited to be here today. My name is Lisa Palmer, and I am the founder and chief AI strategist for a firm called AI Leaders. I have also done a stint with Microsoft. I worked in Microsoft sales for many years and really am a Microsoft advocate on a daily basis. So I'm excited to be engaged with you all. From a daily perspective, my typical business is focused on executives and boards of directors who are trying to figure out what does artificial intelligence mean to them today. There's a particular focus on generative AI, and there's a tremendous overlap with what happens from a security perspective in that space. So that's where I spend a lot of time in conversation, and with 3 different clients just today so far. So very hot topic.
Awesome. And Matt?
Yeah, good to see everybody. Good to see new folks as well that I haven't met. So Matt Soseman, I spent the last 11 years at Microsoft, co-founded the Partner Masters with Justin Slagle back in March. So honored to be here. I'm really interested in this conversation because to Lisa's point, there's a huge opportunity around security with AI, both from an offensive perspective and from a defensive perspective, and I'm sure we'll get into that. And obviously, Microsoft does have a huge interest in AI and securing AI. And so I think this is going to kind of enrich the conversation. And if I just have an ask for everybody, you just have kind of an open mind around this, right? So even if you're very small or very big in your organization, this is absolutely going to affect everybody at some point, right? If it hasn't already. And so we do want to make sure that we touch on that. But if you do have questions and you have comments, put them in the chat window. It will be dynamic, and we'll pivot as needed, but we want to make sure that you get the most out of this discussion today.
So let me just start with, we wanted to title this presentation about security and AI. It may be the opportunity of our lifetimes, but it's also potentially going to be disastrous for some, right? It could put some of these partners out of business, other technology firms as well. But if we look at, like, Microsoft has invested, or they've said that they will invest $20 billion over the next 5 years. And then we just saw them put another $10 billion into AI. Like, these are obviously the main, these are the two big topics that everybody's talking about. But Lisa, I want to come to you and can we clarify, because I know that there's still a lot of people who are asking a lot of questions around AI, and then you're talking specifically about generative AI. So can you clarify for everyone what exactly is generative AI versus just AI?
So I think it's really important for us to level set with regard to some core definitions regarding artificial intelligence. So there is a lot of media focus today that's been brought about by the release of ChatGPT back on November 30th of 2022. I always tell people that if you built a strategy, if you got advice about what to do from either a business perspective or a career perspective, if any of those things predated November 30th of last year, you need to reassess it because everything has changed since then. So from a definitional perspective, let's think of what we have today is known as weak artificial intelligence. And that means that this is task-oriented, task-specific artificial intelligence. What we hear a lot of the pundits talking about in the media is artificial general intelligence, and that's what we call strong AI. And that is somewhat at this point of ethereal AI that's out in the future, where it's more like, it's more like a science fiction movie. It arguably will be here, but it's not where we're at today. And then if we take that into perspective from a generative AI perspective, we want to think about things like predictive texting on your phone is a form of generative AI. So it's about being able to have systems that are trained on data, leveraging algorithms that automatically create, based on that combination, that create text. They create, now we can go all the way from text to video, full form video, through these generative AI tools. So these are the kinds of things that are capturing the imagination, and they're also the kinds of things that are capturing the imagination of bad actors.
Yeah, well, great segue, because Matt, like when we hear about all these amazing AI tools that can be right at our fingertips, the bad guys get them too. So when you're talking to people about security and then AI, you talk about AI, why is this such a security risk?
Yeah. I mean, we could probably spend all day talking about the security risks, but one of the biggest ones that come to mind, especially with generative AI, is think about business email compromise or just phishing email. Yesterday it was around putting malicious links to malicious websites in the email or attaching malicious files. Today and tomorrow, it's around sending maybe Lisa an email saying, hey, Lisa, try to wire transfer me some money. But typically those emails are very poorly formatted. They have poor spelling, poor grammar. Sometimes they can't be very convincing. Well, now with ChatGPT and with generative AI, now we can actually use AI, and the attackers can use AI to make those phishing emails be a lot more realistic and a lot more, seemingly coming from somebody of authority. And so if I try to impersonate Justin as the CEO of Partner Masters to send a business compromise email to maybe somebody on the team using ChatGPT as an example, I could avoid those spelling errors and those grammar errors, and I can make it a lot more convincing. That is actually top of mind for me. I mean, there's some other threats that are out there with AI, but that's huge, because now that puts it in the hands of just about anyone. And we've all used ChatGPT in one way or another. It's actually really good at writing language. And so that definitely poses a huge safety risk.
And then, go ahead.
Do you mind if I add a thought to that, Justin? So
Yeah.
I agree that's very much top of mind from a concern perspective for me too, Matt. The power of generative AI is that it allows for personalization at scale. So it is creating what is very clear, very reputable language that could use data that is available in the environment specific to that organization or even that individual, so that a phishing message that comes to them looks very real, looks very credible from a language perspective, and it's also got some element of personalization in it that they think no one would know. And so we have to be much more diligent from a social engineering perspective to make sure that we are raising awareness and raising our game. And there's, of course, a lot of technical things we need to do in addition to this. But, from my perspective, we have to lean into that people, process, tech triangle to help to combat this.
Yeah. Lisa, you just reminded me of something. I'm sure everybody in this meeting gets messages on LinkedIn all the time. People trying to sell them things and reaching out about events or whatever it may be. There's now software that where you create videos, it uses AI to personalize that video to you. So if I click on one of these messages on LinkedIn that looks like a personal message and I play, say, the video that they sent me, it's like, hey, Matt Soseman, and it'll be personalized to me. And so that could be very deceiving if used in a deceiving way. And that's how, to your point, Lisa, I mean, that just makes me think of how you can use this in a way that can be threatening. Absolutely.
Well, let's maybe pivot and talk about everybody who's here is Microsoft partner. They're looking for opportunities. Right now, like the way I've seen it so far is everybody wants to have this conversation, right? Everybody's in that first step of learning about AI. But one of my fears is that the bad actors are acting on this first, and they're getting a huge head start. And in AI, like we've seen how fast it can go with OpenAI going from zero to a billion users in what, a month. Like how fast can these bad actors now go? Lisa, are you seeing anything from your side when you're having conversations with people about AI and generative AI? How fast are they acting on this, or are they just? It just seems like they're going to collect information for the next 6 months while they lose ground.
Yeah, there is the conversation I often have to that point is to say you doing nothing is accepting an exceptional amount of risk. That's the conversation that I have to have with organizations who are risk averse. And so they want to be very careful. They want to be thoughtful and cautious before they move forward. And what I make sure that the message that they walk away hearing from me is that you aren't avoiding risk by doing nothing. You are embracing risk. I always tell people that you must be wildly risk tolerant to take this approach, which no one likes that phrase, by the way. They don't want to be thought of as risk tolerant, but that's the reality of what's happening. So I am seeing organizations that are choosing to be cautious. The bad actors are not. We have many, many, many examples of enterprises that are being impacted by either sophisticated phishing or sophisticated deep fakes is another issue that is somewhat extortion cases that are happening through generative AI being used for creative deep fakes. So it's really important to help organizations to address this problem. It's already there. They're dealing with it on a daily basis. Many risk assessment organizations are feeling very overwhelmed with what to do with the current situation.
Yeah. Matt, what are you seeing on the security side of this? I mean, from what I've seen, I haven't proactively heard a lot of people outside of Microsoft talking about Security Copilot leveraging AI to help with security. But are you seeing in the security business, like are people starting to think about how they're going to leverage this, or again, is it bad actors who are getting a big head start?
No, they're starting to think about it. One of the ways that they're starting to think about it is if you think about the traditional vulnerabilities that exist within a computer network or on a device itself or within software, typically it can be very difficult to find those vulnerabilities, what we call zero-day vulnerabilities, where no patch exists, right? Using the power of AI, that drastically speeds up the process. So if we go through and try to figure out vulnerabilities on a computer network, that could take days, months, even years, and you still might be impossible to find everything. With the power of AI, that speeds that up, and it speeds up the accuracy as well. And so on the defensive side, a lot of organizations out there are starting to explore, with the help of some vendors, how do we use AI to go and find those vulnerabilities in the environment so we can secure those vulnerabilities before the bad guys find them. On the other side of the fence, on the offensive side, the same thing's happening. Bad actors and adversaries are using AI to discover the vulnerabilities in an organization's network and software and devices to try to exploit it before it can be patched or holes filled. So it goes on both sides of the fence. It's very much a cat and mouse game. And this is happening on the large enterprise side all the way down to the small business side. It's something that affects all of us.
Definitely want to dive into that. Patrick, I see you raised your hand. Do you want to ask a question?
Yeah, ask a question and then comment on something Lisa brought up. And it's been our experience, and I'm ex-military, and I was in DOD when they switched from DIACAP to the risk management framework. And this is what we found now that we're facing. There's a lot of cyber hype, and there's a lot of marketing and cyber awareness, and we understand that. But this is the bigger problem. We're dealing with security, and this is what this is about. But if you define security and look at security, there's two components. There's physical security, and then there's cyber security. And what has happened is it's now converged. I'm also part of the Security Industry Association and the cybersecurity chair for the Utilities Board. And we've started looking at this in the last couple of years in depth. And the point is this: if you look at the OSI model, or you look at defense in depth, the first layer is physical security. And this is what we found out in DOD as well. And I found this out in other agencies in the federal government, such as the VA, that you have to tackle that physical layer first, and then you move to other layers. And then going back to what Lisa was talking about when she mentioned enterprise. So it's not really a project. It's not really a one-time, one-shot. What we're dealing with is a risk management framework program for your entire enterprise at all layers. And here's the problem that she brought up clearly. And it is something that we're dealing with right now. And we stop moving from the middle management and the lower technical people to the top. And that's governance, risk, and compliance. Because what we found is this: the leadership, CEOs, agency heads, and the boards, they have to change their mindset. So the problem starts at the top with risk, security, and most especially with AI. So they have to be trained, educated, and you have to do this coordination piece to where very clearly they have to understand it's their culture that they have to change to make sure that all of the staff and all of the assets, human assets, IT assets, business assets, everything in the enterprise is now somewhat connected or impacted by some kind of security piece. And so by doing it that way with GRC first, then doing your risk management framework, which is the operational piece, then you can combine physical and cyber. And now what you have is you have SCADA, OT. Now you're doing DevSecOps with a risk approach, not a cyber approach, not a security approach. But the key point I'm making is risk mitigation, all assets, enterprise-wide, starts at the top.
Matt, Lisa,
Yeah,
respond.
Yeah, Patrick, I was just going to say, thanks for that. I think you're spot on, right? And it goes without saying, not just in cybersecurity, not just in physical security, but it's really with anything. It starts with a governance model. It starts with acceptable use. It starts with leadership setting the stage on how are we going to use this technology in the organization. It can't just be the cool tech. It has to be people and process, to Lisa's earlier point. The other thing I think that you're hitting spit on with physical access is, and we see this all the time, where a client has amazing cybersecurity posture, but then the servers are in a wiring closet that doesn't even have a lock on the door, right? And so if you kind of use that analogy and be creative about it, it's so true with a lot of organizations. And so that starts with leadership and starting at the board level, taking it seriously and making the financial investments and the commitments within the organization to make sure that this is actually carried out in a thoughtful and impactful way. If you're not going to take it seriously, then that's another conversation, but it has to happen at that board level and then flush down from there.
So, Patrick also brought up compliance, and really, I'd love to get both of your perspectives on this, and maybe we can start with you, Lisa, on this one. Like, when we think about AI, are there compliance risks in some cases with, maybe exposing different data, or how do you think about compliance with AI?
So I think one of the things that is a misunderstanding in the overall environment from a business perspective right now is that there's a belief that AI isn't regulated. And although it's true that we don't have a federal level law in the US that is specifically targeted at compliance, what we already have in place are a myriad of different regulatory bodies that have regulations in place that directly apply to artificial intelligence. So we recently saw a joint statement come out from the EEOC, the CFPB, the DOJ, and this is like alphabet soup. I'm sorry, the fourth one will come to me. There were 4 agencies that came out and made a combined statement that said, hey, enterprises, we're watching. All of our regulations still apply to artificial intelligence, so make sure you're paying attention. There is definitely a compliance element. There's more coming. And to make the environment even more challenging, we're also now seeing a tremendous number of states take up their own concerns with artificial intelligence dangers. And we're starting to see states enact their own data laws and their own artificial intelligence laws. So there are now 4 states in the US that have their own data laws. None of them are the same. And we have 177 pieces of pending legislation at the state level that are AI related. So the complexity from a compliance perspective is only going to get worse, and it's going to happen really quickly.
Well, what about you, Matt? How do you see compliance with AI and security?
Yeah. So I'm gonna take it from 2 different angles. First angle, just maybe take a little bit of a spin on what Lisa said. If we think about using something like ChatGPT, I know everybody in this call has used it in some form or fashion. I have to remind myself and think about anytime I put text in a ChatGPT, it's being used to train the model. And so you have to be extremely careful on what that means from a compliance perspective. Are you inputting somebody's personally identifiable information? Are you inputting patient health information? Are you putting something in a ChatGPT that could be in violation of a compliance standard? And then how is that data going to be used downstream to train the model? Who has access to that data? What can they do with that data? How long is that data going to stay in the system? That is a very scary thing. So it goes back to that earlier comment around acceptable use and a governance policy and what you should or should not, put into something like ChatGPT. So that's top of mind from a compliance perspective. And I think that's something that leadership at really any business needs to think about and how they use AI. The other side of it, though, is when we think about from a compliance perspective, how do I stay up to date on compliance standards? How do I make sure all the compliance controls in my environment are up to date? Well, that's where actually AI could be of great benefit. It can actually go out into my environment and help me understand whether or not I'm compliant with the law of the land, help me understand if I'm missing any security controls or compliance controls. So it could be used for good in that manner as well. But it's definitely starting at the top of thinking about what does it mean for compliance? What are the do's and don'ts? And then letting it kind of flow from there. But all good things to think about.
Yeah, I want to build on something, Matt, that you just said from an enterprise perspective to give an example of a breach of intellectual property information. Samsung has now had 3 separate incidents where they had employees leak critical intellectual property. Oh. So this is a perfect example of something that is a high risk situation for all types of customers. And obviously Samsung's a technology company, and yet they still had this happen. So we need to help our organizations that we partner with. We really need to help them to understand that there are significant risks here and make sure that we're helping to raise awareness around the fact that you cannot put anything that is either private information or intellectual property into these public-facing large language models. We all need to kind of take that up as our own educational mantra and make sure that we share that information to protect both our customers and our overall intellectual property.
Yeah. Hey, Matt, as you guys were both talking, I was thinking like we talked to so many partners about the excitement around Copilot and what Microsoft's doing with Copilot. But when I think about compliance and I think about Copilot and it having access to our entire systems, like if we don't lock down the data, like somebody could go find out what my paycheck is. People can go find out my Social Security number, all the stuff that our company holds. So how do think about it for opportunity for these partners here. how can they leverage Microsoft security and some of the tools that are there to help people get ready for Copilot that might be their entry into AI?
Yeah, the train has definitely left the station, right? And so Copilot's coming. And as many of the partners on this call know, you're going to have Windows Copilot, Microsoft 365 Copilot, Security Copilot, Copilot for everything. It's a huge investment by Microsoft. But what that means is the time is now to prepare the data. Because once Copilot launches, it's going to index and learn about every piece of data in the environment. So to your point, if my paycheck is stored somewhere in Microsoft 365, there is a chance that Copilot will learn from that, index it, and expose that. And that's just a crude example, but for all the partners on the call, we want to think about how do we go into that client's environment now and start securing this data, start segmenting this data, start classifying the data appropriately. What type of data should we use to train Copilot? What type of data should we not use? So there's a lot of opportunity right now to go through and understand that data, discover it, classify it appropriately, and possibly even secure it. And so there's tools from Microsoft like Microsoft Purview that can absolutely do that. And for the Microsoft partners on the call, there might even be funding programs for that, right? And other things downstream for you to leverage there. But the opportunity is now, the time is now, because what's going to happen is when Copilot launches and you have clients out there that are starting to use it or just enable it, and that data is not properly prepared, it could be a bad thing for you, right? Because that now you've got sensitive data that's now being used by Copilot, and that could open up vulnerability and a potential risk.
Yeah. Hey, Lisa, one thing that, AI is all over. I think I've seen 60 Minutes and others who are doing stories about ChatGPT and just AI in general. And I'm pretty sure it was the 60 Minutes story that I saw with Brad Smith and Microsoft, and they were talking about like half the data is wrong, right? So how is AI and generative AI, how fast is it getting smarter, and when are we going to be able to rely on the results of what AI is producing?
That's $1 million question, Justin. So yes, there is a lot of inaccuracy in what's happening right now. It's often referred to in generative AI as hallucinations. I don't love that terminology because it personifies systems that clearly are not human-based systems. So what we are experiencing is that the further you get away from the original question that is posed, from the original prompt, so the longer that thread gets, the further away from reality you get. So in some of the interviews that we've seen on the media, and I know that there was a New York Times reporter who ended up getting I think it was Bing to tell him that it was in love with him. It was quite it was quite an interesting interview. What had happened there was he was many prompts into the same thread. So remember that the closer you are to the original piece, the original prompt, the more accurate the response will be. Specifically to your question about when is it really going to be more reliable? This is going to require, in my opinion, this requires human in the loop. It requires things like reinforcement learning. We have to do a better job of making sure that we are correcting these systems when they are not accurate. And that is going to take a period of time. And how quickly that happens, I suspect it's going to happen faster than history has proven with regard to technology's evolution, because this tech is progressing so much faster and is getting better so much faster than any other technology in history. I suspect that the answer to that will be sooner rather than later. But for now, fact checking everything is absolutely critical.
Well, Lisa, I was also just thinking as you're talking, like the other thing that kind of goes hand in hand with AI is right now especially in tech, there's a lot of people who are laying people off. And there's a lot of people who are losing their jobs, and AI is being blamed for a lot of it. How do you see, and through your research and so forth, how do you see like 5 years from now with AI? Are we going to be, it's kind of like cloud computing, right? Everybody in IT was afraid, hey, I'm going to lose my job because everything's going to cloud. And now all of a sudden IT's just gotten so much bigger because we can focus on more important strategic stuff. Is the same thing going to happen with AI? What's it going to look like in 3 to 5 years?
I am incredibly bullish about what's going to happen in 3 to 5 years. I equate this to when the internet first came on the scene, it was going to crush jobs and we were going to lose everything, we were going to lose all this capability from a human perspective. That's not what happened at all. We saw an elevated level of human productivity. We saw an elevated number of higher quality of jobs that hit the market. I fully anticipate that is going to happen. So guidance that I am giving now to executives and to boards are to reevaluate jobs often. So where you may have had a job description that used to be written once a year or once every 2 years, and people were able to largely adhere to that job description for a long period of time, that world is gone, because right now we're in a massive disruption phase. So I'm now telling people you need to really seriously be thinking about the impacts, particularly of generative AI, on individual jobs. So it's not that jobs in totality are being replaced, it is that tasks within specific jobs are being replaced. And so what you have the opportunity to do is to reassess jobs every 60 to 90 days and say, where have we been able to leverage productivity? We've been able to raise individual productivity. So now we have some additional time. Do we want to fill that with more strategic activities? What do we want to actively replace in a job description as this evolution continues? And so I really encourage that. Let's think about this as a task evolution. Let's update those individual job descriptions, and let's get the human creative power really kicked into gear here. I think it's a huge opportunity.
Hey, Matt, same question to you. I mean, so securing AI, is that going to be in the security world? Is that going to be a new source of opportunity for our partners here, an opportunity for people to jump into?
Yeah, I think there's going to be a few opportunities. Being able to secure AI, absolutely. And then we're going to talk about cryptography at some point here, and what that means with quantum computing, because that's a whole other part of this, and using AI to be able to crack encryption algorithms. So there's going to be a lot of opportunity out there to go and secure AI and then be able to protect against what AI can do. The other side of this, though, is using AI to be more secure. So I went to that example earlier about how I could use AI to discover new vulnerabilities on my network. Well, I could also use AI and maybe a new job to be able to discover more easily, how do I respond to a security alert? So if I get a security alert that I don't know how to respond to, and maybe I'm not as familiar with, and maybe we don't have we do have a talent shortage right now, so maybe we don't have somebody on staff that understands that security alert. I can then use AI to help me understand, well, what steps do I need to take to try to investigate that alert and go remediate it? So from the defensive standpoint, there's also a huge opportunity what AI will bring to me as maybe just a cybersecurity professional in general. I don't think we've seen everything yet, and I think it's just the tip of the iceberg. But I think we're going to see a lot more around opportunities to secure AI, and then also security jobs out there to actually leverage AI to be more defensive.
Yeah. Patrick, I'm going to come to you in a second. Steve just wrote a question, maybe it's a follow-up to you, Lisa, about, is there any way to tell the percentage of queries that are accurate versus wrong or misleading?
Bottom line, no. Bottom line, no. I was trying to think of other ways to, that we could potentially back into that. I will give you an example that there's a belief, particularly within the education industry, there's a belief that you can use ChatGPT or generative AI detectors to determine whether or not somebody used generative AI to create text. Those have been quantified. The detectors have been quantified to be correct 29 to 61% of the time. So if and as a specific example, one of them identified quite literally the U.S. Constitution as generative AI created content. Okay, so these are wildly inaccurate ability to just detect what is created by generative AI, let alone what is actually truthful or what is accurate. So that's why it's so important for us to actively participate. So if you're someone who is actively using generative AI tools, and if you as a partner are working with organizations who are using generative AI tools, make sure that you educate them that if the systems give you back information that is inaccurate, you want to make sure that you tell them. You know how there's the response mechanism where you can do a thumbs up, a thumbs down, give us content, give us response. That is all part of the retraining mechanisms that are built into these generative AI tools. And if you see something that you know is inaccurate, the sooner that we all participate in that process, the better quality of results we're going to get from these Gen AI tools. So it's a very small thing. Just click the down, click that thumbs down that you know it's wrong, and we're all able to contribute to improving the quality of the responses from these tools.
Oh, great suggestion. All right, Patrick, what's going on?
Yeah, it gets to, and this is something also that Lisa brought up earlier that's very important, is the data part of it and the cost. And I took a UC Berkeley program 3 or 4 months for AI and its applications in business, and it got pretty deep and it got technical. And one of the things that came out consistently was that 80% of the cost of dealing with AI dealt with cleaning up the data and data cleansing and data filtering and fact checking and those kinds of things. And that's why, and we haven't brought this up yet, but there's an important component of AI, and that's when we get into machine learning and deep learning, which there's a difference between the two. And then there's supervised learning and unsupervised learning. And then there's clustering. And so when you start talking about computer vision and you start talking about images and you start talking about deep learning, where you're 50 deep into the learning algorithms, and then you have these outliers, then they have to measure that outlier to determine the truth versus the false. And it gets into, Lisa, so you've seen these algorithms, and there are many of them, but the point is, when you start talking about pixels and we start getting into quantum, where you can actually measure qubits of the differences between those 780 pixels because it's about vision, and then you're into unclustered, unsupervised learning and deep learning, then now we're into a whole new realm of what AI is really about. And this is why you're seeing a lot of senior leadership go to the White House, because now they're very concerned that these algorithms and this clustering and this deep learning now takes on a life of its own in the learning capacity, and they do. There are some situations where they brought them up in class, these professors at UC Berkeley, and we studied and looked at what happens when the unclustered learning algorithm goes out of control. And then they had some examples, and they're now researching this, and this is a problem. And so this is some of the fear that we're seeing. But the point is, there's a guy by the name of Andrew Ng. NG is his last name. And he said something very intelligent. He said, it's not about the big data, because you're just spending a lot of money trying to clean up a lot of other people's data. Use small data, and then use learning models in structured learning, and then run your models against clean data. If the cancer is about a baby toe, well, then only use baby toe cancer data. Why are you using this big data model, and then you're going to waste all this time and all this money trying to just find out something you can train your model on that's already proven? So what you're going to see is a lot of organizations selling data that is clean data, synthetic data, learning models, things that are true, things that have already been fact checked. And so when you're getting into unsupervised and clustering and you're dealing with big data, well, that's a long, expensive road. So you want to focus on small data, solid data, clean data, filtered data, proven data, and then train your models against those.
Those are great points, Patrick. And maybe I can throw this out for either Matt or Lisa. But again, when we think about that, all Microsoft partners here and looking for the opportunity, like Microsoft has made OpenAI available in Azure. Like you can think about, hey, we can use ChatGPT, we can use Copilot, but what are the opportunities that these partners have to bring AI? Is it that they just use OpenAI to go build a new model? Is the opportunity about using existing models? Where are the opportunities?
I'll jump in first, and Lisa, feel free to jump in. I think for me, it's understanding what are the quick wins, right? And from a business perspective, where can I have efficiency? Where can I optimize costs? Where can I provide a better customer experience? And so for many of the partners in this call, they run a help desk. What does that mean now in the world of ChatGPT and generative AI? That means if I could have a chatbot that maybe my client sends a message to, and that chatbot is smart enough to then provide a good enough response back to the client on, hey, try these actions to be able to troubleshoot your issue and fix your issue. Or maybe it might go into the backend system and fix the issue for you. But I start to think about, what are the opportunities from a business outcome perspective that you can start to apply something like ChatGPT, and it might be from a help desk perspective and optimizing your help desk operations. It might be rather than the client sending a message to ChatGPT, it might be your help desk personnel sending a message to ChatGPT to say, hey, I've got a client that called in, they have this computer problem, how do I help? So there's a lot of ways I can leverage that, and that might be just training on all of my knowledge base articles and all of my existing help desk content to be able to optimize that workflow. But there's probably many examples out there, frankly, that are probably right underneath our noses where that opportunity lives. I think we just need to be a little creative and what are those business outcomes? How does that actually move the business forward? But do it in a secure and compliant way, right? And that's the trick. You want to do it correctly. You can't just wing it. And I think, again, for the partners on this call, that's your opportunity where your clients want to use AI to transform their business. How can you help them do that the right way in a secure and compliant manner? Lisa, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, great points, Matt. I think that this idea of being able to leverage, I'm going to call it small language models that are working off of the foundation of the large language models, I think has tremendous potential for us from an operational perspective and running our own businesses, as well as what we're doing to support the clients that we work with. So what I'm seeing happen across industries right now is this idea of creating small language models that are specific to a situation. So you have a healthcare organization who is wanting to basically provide FAQ to reduce the number of actual calls that make it through to their call centers. So that using a language model that allows for natural language processing questions versus an old-fashioned FAQ where people just get those kind of standard responses, building that small language model that works off of the large language model capability, you're able to train your small language model on all of the relevant documents that you already have. It could be text documents, it could be video documents, it could be audio documents. Whatever that data, that structured or unstructured data looks like, you could use to train those. And then that provides you with very specific point case problem solving. So to your point, Matt, about make sure that you are doing things that are immediately driving business value. So I can tell you from my own research, there were 5 core takeaways. The number one takeaway was that organizations who are successful with deploying artificial intelligence start with a business project that will drive tangible business value. And they do so in a way that is a pilot that can later be scaled. So that core underpinning of focus there, and focus secondly on what your customers need, that helps you to prioritize which one of those business cases you should work on first. Those are the number 1 and number 2 components to ensuring success with AI.
So Lisa, you were saying a lot of things that makes me think, okay, well, is the opportunity really just with big business, or is it also for small, medium business?
I'm actually, I mean, I'm a very small business myself. I have three. There's three of us in my business, and I am actively working on a chatbot solution that is informed from my particular knowledge base, so that I can enable those customers that I work with to self-serve through an NLP mechanism based off of my intellectual property. So even for a business as small as mine, there is an opportunity to use this capability.
Okay. What about industry? You mentioned healthcare. Is there a specific industry that you're seeing that's adopting AI faster than others?
So the industries that tend to be out in front are, typically are tending to be out in front now as well. And I'm being very specific to generative AI. There are organizations like manufacturing, for example, hasn't necessarily historically been the first, the early adopters with regard to technology, but they have done some amazing things with computer vision. They're doing some really amazing work with RPA that's tied into computer vision. So a lot of crossover between automation tools and AI. So even though they're not necessarily a leader, I still see a lot of really cool stuff happening in the manufacturing space. But with regard to Gen AI, I see a lot of leadership happening from financial services organizations are jumping in with both feet. I see healthcare organizations doing a lot with generative AI capabilities. I am seeing professional services organizations actively working to solve this problem. And that is, and when I say solve this problem, their problem is that it's a huge opportunity, and they're trying to figure out, how do I make sure I get the structure in place so that, to Matt's earlier point, I can make sure I do it in a secure and compliant way, because they want to get out there as fast as possible. There are a myriad of different industries that are really doubling down on the money that they're spending in the space, and we're seeing announcements from an AI perspective, particularly Gen AI, in the billion-dollar. I am commonly seeing organizations come out and make billion-dollar, multi-billion-dollar commitments to generative AI. So the space is exploding.
Oh, Jonathan, you had a question?
Yeah. One of the things I heard about recently was that Microsoft is actually going to allow copilots to be customizable by organizations, to kind of generate your own copilot for your own company. And I'm wondering, I mean, that's got to be complicated enough to do, but how do you use that in a secure way? How would you? I mean, how would a small company, especially, possibly manage the implications and the security risks that would be involved with generating your own copilot? I mean, it just seems massively complicated for what could potentially go wrong.
Yeah, I agree with you, Jonathan. It can be complicated and complex, but I think it goes back to kind of my earlier point. You start with the data, and you start with, what kind of data do you have? Understanding that discovery of the data, then going through and classifying that data, and then segmenting that data on what's allowed to be used with Copilot and what's not allowed to be used with Copilot. And then back to the earlier conversation we had about acceptable use and governance, and what's happening at the leadership level on down. I think you marry that up with the data, that starts to set up a good program that you could then build on for the use of Copilot inside your environment, right? Now, with that being said, Copilot's not released yet. So we still have a ways to go until Microsoft, makes all their formal announcements. We actually get this in our hands and we start using it. But again, the time is now to think about that data, because once it arrives, you need to start. Customers may already start implementing it without your knowledge, and then you're going to be called in to clean it up. So you want to be a little proactive about that data and understand, okay, how do we start cleaning this up right now?
So this is interesting. So as you guys are talking about this, I'm thinking, okay, well, like at the Partner Masters, Matt, we're always talking to partners about, hey, we got to go build a solution offering. Like you can't just go say, hey, we can do AI, we can do security. That's just too big. So I'd love to hear from both of you on this one. Like if you're putting together an offering that's, hey, this is our foot in the door, what kind of offering would you suggest for these partners to put together to start taking to market that's just that entry point?
Yeah, I think for me, it's around that data prep, and it's around preparing the environment for Copilot and for the use of AI. That could be one specific offer. It could also be around security. Let's make sure that not only do we identify and classify that data and prep the data, but let's also secure the data that maybe doesn't need to be seen by Copilot. So what does that look like? And so in terms of Microsoft, that's using things like purview and sensitivity labels and encryption of the data and governing access to the data and identity and conditional access and all those things. But again, I kind of stand by it. It goes without saying that data is where you start. And so those are the type of solutions to start building now. And then as Copilot gets released and as Microsoft makes their announcements, then it's also specializing in Copilot itself, right? And as we know, there's going to be different flavors of it. So, Jonathan, for general networks, it might be something like Security Copilot for healthcare, right? As an example. And so there's many opportunities out there to get these solutions in the marketplace, but I think you start with the data and you start with that underlying foundation first. I don't know if that helps to paint a picture, but that's what I'm thinking.
Isn't it interesting though that it kind of all goes back to a zero trust conversation? It's all around Microsoft 365 E5, right? Driving up the higher level SKUs. Lisa, from the AI perspective, what suggestions would you have for these partners thinking about what is that foot in the door type of solution that they could put together?
So I'm going to mirror what Matt said about data. Everything starts with the data, and in many of these situations, we have organizations that, number one, they're thinking about AI in such a way that is a boil the ocean type of approach, and that is going to be. I have personally researched and worked with many customers now where I've seen over and over again that does not work. So what does work is this focus. Let's look at the data, let's get good quality data, and let's solve for a specific business problem. So I love the idea of focusing on the data first in order to help organizations get off and running. And from an offering perspective, I would think about what about helping organizations to assess the state of their data with regard to a specific business problem. So encourage them to get very specific with the problem that they want to solve and what the metrics are going to be to prove that you have been successful in solving that problem, and then help them to do an assessment of what the data is, and then let's get that data operationally prepared to be able to provide the outcomes that they need from the AI when they're ready to release it. So those are the two things that are kind of top of mind for me.
Okay, awesome. Matt, earlier you brought up quantum. And so my question to you, because when I think about AI and quantum computing, it can be a very scary conversation. How close are we to quantum, and how close, and then what does that mean when it comes to AI and security?
Yeah, from a Microsoft perspective, it's something that Microsoft is very interested in. In fact, there was a blog post that they released at the end of May where they talked a little bit about quantum computing and the security of quantum computing. But let me just summarize it kind of for everybody and make this real. So for several decades, right, probably the past 50 years or so, cryptography has existed and various forms of cryptography. In the modern age, we have things like RSA and SHA-128 and SHA-256, right? Well, cryptography is based on solving very complex math problems. And that's why cryptography can be very, very, very difficult to break and very expensive to be able to break. Well, when you start to think about quantum computing, that cryptography can be broken like that. That changes the landscape for everything and everyone. So now start to think about nation states. Start to think about adversaries that they use quantum computing to crack encryption, even the toughest encryption that's out there. So this is something that Microsoft is putting a lot of thought into, and they published some articles recently about that. But it's something to start thinking about. Now it goes back to the data point, right? Understand what data you have and understand how that data is used and where it lives and so on and so forth. But when it comes to quantum computing, that is kind of the next level of threat that we're going to start seeing very quickly. Quantum computing is already here. There's, just go out there and do an internet search for quantum computing. You'll start to see all the major technology and cloud players. They're using it. They're doing research and development on it. So are adversaries, so are nation states, so are cyber threat actors. But once they figure out and crack that code on quantum computing, it can be used to crack very complex encryption algorithms, which means almost anything now can be broken. And now that's going to totally change the game. So it's something that we want to start, kind of thinking about. I don't want to scare everybody, but it's something to start thinking about now, and especially around the use of that data that exists within the environment. It's something we want to start thinking about. Lisa, do you have any thoughts on that, or is that something that you've looked into?
Yeah, I actually wrote, I have a blog post that kind of simplifies this dramatically, if anybody wants to go check it out, where I talk about quantum plus AI. But it's going to be here sooner than we expect. So we have seen it's going to be widely available sooner than we expect. Let's put it that way. So we have seen predictions saying it's 5 years out, it's 10 years out, and that just keeps getting smaller and smaller. So, IBM is now saying they're 2.5 years away from broadly making this capability available. There are other players that are, and obviously Microsoft's deeply entrenched here, and some of their positioning has been somewhat quiet, so it's a little bit harder to tell what's going on there. But I think that it is important for us to understand the power of the combination of these capabilities. So when quantum has the ability to speed up, so think of it like taking all of the capabilities that we have and make it faster and better. So more accurate and faster is what we will be able to see happen with quantum. So if in a good way, the good news about that is that there's tons of opportunity that will come with that. That's going to open a lot of opportunities for things to be done better than they are today. When I think of things like quantum plus AI, I see us solving complex problems like curing cancer. I see us being able to solve global sustainability challenges. I see us being able to start to help to make agriculture more readily available and working in different parts of the world than it's ever done before, to help us to address world hunger. I mean, I seriously believe that these things are possible. So there's lots of good that's coming. But to Matt's point, we've really got to be prepared, because the bad actors are actively working on this capability just like we are from a good perspective. And they are going to use it to go after, I suspect, financial systems will be first. I also think that we're going to see things against our utility systems. I think our utilities are going to be big targets for these kinds of attacks. So we, from a preparatory perspective, I think that it is prudent for us as technologists to really start to think about how can we help to get in front of these issues and help to support our customers to get in front of these issues, so that we can lean into all those good possibilities and kill off those things that scare all of us.
So Lisa, Patrick brought up a little bit earlier about machine learning, and we haven't really touched a whole lot on machine learning, but can you talk to us a little bit about machine learning, AI? What are the opportunities for partners around machine learning?
So machine learning I feel like machine learning is the workhorse of artificial intelligence. And if I was going to put a lot of time and effort into solutioning, I would put a lot of effort in and around machine learning. I also think, depending on the industries that you're interested in, I mentioned computer vision a little bit before, and then NLP, natural language processing. So from my perspective, those three, at least, from a broad industry application and from a repeatability perspective, to be able to take something that you create, learn, train staff, etc. Those things you're going to be able to find multiple applications of ability to use and reuse the lessons that you learn through those kinds of artificial intelligence. So there are a myriad. I tell people that the term AI is sort of like saying ice cream, and then we want to talk about generative AI as chocolate ice cream, and computer vision is vanilla ice cream, and to help people understand that it's very different technology and different capability. But machine learning is the bulk of my study that I did over the last 4 years was all in and around machine learning.
Yeah, and when you get into some of those cognitive services, I mean, in some ways, my time at Microsoft, I was seeing that, hey, this is kind of an easy button. Like Microsoft is making computer vision and making natural language and those things available just at the press of a button. So I definitely see that, hey, go explore. I mean, that's one of the messages I would want to share to the group is go explore some of the things that Microsoft just makes available to you. And just start playing with it. One of the things Matt and I do with Partner Masters, we just like to break stuff. Like just go play with it, figure it out. And that's the thing. And maybe Matt, maybe you can talk to this. It's kind of off topic a little bit, but about internal use, right? We often preach to our partners, hey, use the stuff that Microsoft gives you, because when you use it internally, you usually can talk about it better. But you want to talk about internal use and how people can use AI and security in their environments?
Yeah, I mean, as a Microsoft partner, and if you have a solution designation, you get internal use rights to a lot of software and a lot of benefits. And if you think about it from a security perspective, you get access to a lot of the Microsoft security products at no cost as a Microsoft partner. And so just applying that internally within your own business, and to Justin's point, breaking it and using it and figuring out the ins and outs makes you a better Microsoft partner, but it also makes you more profitable because then you know how to go sell it, right? And if we think about this call, and all of us on this call are using Microsoft Teams, and if you use it every day to join meetings, you could probably sell it pretty well because you use it every day. Same goes with the Microsoft security tools. And if you think about it from an AI perspective, Microsoft has a partnership with OpenAI, and there's OpenAI capability in Azure. And so as a Microsoft partner, you also get Azure credits. And so how can you go and build an OpenAI environment on Azure to go play with it and go experiment and go understand it, right? Sometimes the best way to learn something is just to get in there and just play with it, because then that's when the creative juices start flowing. So it's probably maybe a challenge for everybody on this call is, go play with it and see what you like and what you don't like. But I can guarantee you it's going to give you a lot of ideas and probably make you even more dangerous to figure out, okay, how do I go build a business on this? And how do I get ahead of my competitors?
I want to add on to that. I think that there's tremendous opportunity for partners. I just did some advisory for a multinational organization this morning at the ridiculous 5 a.m. hour because it was in their time, right? But the last thing that I said to them is talent is everything. Talent is everything. You have to be looking for, what are you going to do with regard to upskilling talent? Are you going to contract with talent? Are you going to buy talent through acquisitions? Are you going to look for talent in unusual places like research organizations and think tanks? But the message that I give out over and over and over again is that their talent is everything. And you, from a partner perspective, you have talent that you bring to the table, and all of these customers desperately need the talent. So make sure that you are upskilling yourselves so that you are those people they think of to bring in when they recognize that they have a dearth of talent in their own environment.
Well, isn't that interesting? Because we were just talking about earlier that AI could potentially be the cause for some of the layoffs that are out there, but it's just a shift, right? So thank you for bringing that up, because I've definitely also seen and heard that myself, that there's a ton of opportunity, and then there's not enough skilled people. There's not enough skilled people in our industry anyway, and now there's really not enough skilled people in AI. Patrick, do you have another question or comment?
Just to quickly say that we've been at this for 3 or 4 years, and then we got into the AI piece in the last several months. But Microsoft has been doing it for many years, and we were at the security vanguard, especially with Sentinel and some of the more advanced analytical cyber products and services. And then if you look at Power BI, and then, also the foundation was there. And the point I just want to make is looking at, as Matt brought up, Purview, and we're going to talk, and we can talk about compliance as well. But if you look at risk, physical security, cybersecurity, privacy, resilience, disaster recovery, and you package all this up, as Lisa said, do an assessment, define the problem, apply the technology, and then just look at AI as another tool. But I can tell everyone here, based on our journey in the last 3-4 years and my experience as a technologist, as a CIO, CTO as well, and CISO, I can tell you right now, Microsoft has everything we need today and in the future to be able to manage AI in a very safe way. And it would be responsible. So you just have to get to your baseline, as both Matt and Lisa were saying, and then tailor that 20% with your higher level skill set. And then Microsoft has everything you need in the cloud and all of their services and all of their applications. Once you combine and integrate and converge all of these pieces, then you have the solution that you need to take care of your customers' problems. But you just have to apply your skill sets, as Lisa was saying, and you're going to have to do some upskilling and re-education of you and your staff. But the opportunity is there with Microsoft. I've always not been a Microsoft fan, or I came through some Oracle stuff through federal government and military, and here in the last 4 or 5 years, I really jumped on this wagon because I saw that in healthcare, government, and in government, healthcare, and public sector in general, you're not going to have a huge budget. So Microsoft gives you the opportunity to take all these pieces they have. They're not the best of breed, but it can get the job done in most cases. And where it doesn't get the job done, you can tailor it and modify it, as the team was saying, to tweak it up to the level of what you need. But you don't have to go outside of the Microsoft Cloud organizations and start doing additional programming, APIs, which create another attack vector. And the crux today is about security. So you don't want to create security vulnerabilities because you don't have the skill set and the software and the hardware, in your enterprise environment. Just first look at Microsoft, look at what they have, and then try and use what they have and collaborate using Teams and using some of the tools that they brought to the forefront now. And I can guarantee you, based on my experience in the last 7 months, especially doing deep dives in AI and applying it to customer environments in government, healthcare, and in education, I think you're going to be able to find what you need. And Purview and some of these other new Entra and some of the newer tools that they've come out in the last several months, once you start using these and tweaking them and modifying them, they're going to give you everything you need to manage AI in a robust way. There's always going to be new stuff, but at least you have the foundation and you'll be prepared to layer on the newer products and services because it's going to change. Your organization is going to be a dynamic, learning, digital, accelerated organization, and your customers are going to be heading down that path as well. So we have some challenges as partners, and we're going to need all the help that we can get, especially with the team that we got here.
Patrick, let me ask you something. So you said just a few months ago you really started diving into this. What was the light bulb moment that happened for you that said, okay, I gotta start looking into AI and what Microsoft's doing, or whoever you started looking into?
Well, it started for us 4 years ago, but going back to what Matt said, what the light bulb went on clearly. Again, Microsoft was always using AI in a number of its products and services, especially with business BI and Power Platform and that kind of stuff. You see pieces of all of that. But the light bulb went on for me with Mitre, AT&T, and that's a part of a function, user behavior analytics, and of course with Graph. When I saw Graph, and you can now take a look at an attack vector and then predict what that adversary is going to do, and either you have the security control in place, and you take something like Entra and put compliance and those security templates in your enterprise, and then enforce that policy digitally. Now you have an opportunity to see what your environment looks like, what your enterprise looks like, and you see the adversary, the possible analytical attack path they're going to take to destroy your asset or steal your asset or create a APT. So now you have the analytical tools through AI to be able to graphically now see it. And now it makes it easier because it's not text, it's not, a lot of code, it's not like foggy. You actually, they now turn that text and the code into graphics you now see on your screen. And now you have a dashboard and you have alerting that's built in. Now you can be proactive instead of reactive. That's when the light bulb went in, because once you're reactive, the game is over. They've won. Yeah. So we need to be proactive, especially in security. And that's where we said, that's where we want to be. We want to have our customers put in systems and put in analytics that they can say, here's my critical assets. This information is critical to our organization. It's finance, HR, whatever, or this is our critical asset. We want to protect this segment on the network and blah, blah, blah. So now you have an opportunity to build that baseline and then customize that 20% as I spoke to. If it's a high value asset, you can put all your most expensive resources and staff on your high value assets. And as Lisa was talking about the mundane stuff, you automate that. That's easy breezy stuff day to day. So you can take your staff and say, don't do this anymore. Hey, team, no, we need you over here in DevSecOps working on whatever's in our network right now that we need to focus on, and let the machine learning and let the analytics and let the AI do those day-to-day mundane tasks and let them respond to that from the help desk, and not your higher end expensive, cyber warrior staff that you need to focus on. And then most especially the last piece was we understood governance, risk, and compliance, and the fact that you needed to do risk management framework. Microsoft has all of those templates already. They're already, all you have to do is apply it. And then when you talk about GRC and senior board staff, they can create their policy. They can create 20 policies, and now Microsoft can digitize that policy, and you can enforce that through Active Directory, role-based access control, identity access management, and now you have an opportunity to enforce paper policy through digital analytics. So that's where it really became special to us, because we at that time knew we wanted to go all digital, all enterprise digital, and then now because you want to monitor security near real time, because you can't manage cybersecurity on spreadsheets and images and PDF files and whatever they're doing out there. If you're not doing it analytic, real time, and using Power BI and Synapse and Sentinel and SOAR and SIM, and combining that with the compliance tools to enforce policy throughout the enterprise, using enterprise management as a program in a learning organization, you're going to lose. You'll never be able to do AI. I'm being very honest. If you don't have that foundation of digital acceleration now, do more with less mentality now, you're going to struggle trying to do AI tomorrow.
And Patrick, you are so spot on in 1,000 different ways. I think we should take you on a roadshow with this, because I also just came up with about 20 more questions for the team here.
I'm glad to see it. I'm just glad here. I'm just hoping that it translates to some money for us, because I faced all of this all through my 20 years in the Army and then 25 years of local, state, federal government, and not having staff, not having budget. So when Microsoft started coming out with this stuff, I'm very excited. So absolutely, I just want to see it now translate to some revenue. It means nothing just talking about it in a team meeting. So you're right, I am excited, but I'd like to see it, in full operation, as a solution, and all of us to be able to take advantage of it. And I'm sorry, I don't think Microsoft does a good job in preparing partners to deal with this kind of stuff. I'll just leave it like that.
Yeah.
A little tough.
Well, look, that's why Matt and I have a business. So we're right there with you. We completely get it. But Matt, one of the things that Patrick was talking about was, so he believes in Microsoft. You and I believe in Microsoft, but not every AI tool is Microsoft, right? I think AWS is doing a good job, and Google is considered to be one of the market leaders with AI. But one of the things with security is that even if somebody's using GCP or AWS or whatever they're using, you can still secure it with Microsoft, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's everybody wants to have a multi-cloud strategy these days. Nobody wants to have all their eggs in one basket. Totally understood, right? And that's a good best practice. But the problem with that is if you're using multiple security tools to monitor multiple environments, you run the risk of gaps in your visibility and missing out on alerts and missing out on rich insights. So Microsoft does have security tools that can look across all the cloud platforms, even on premises. And so when you start to think about securing AI and those other cloud workloads, start securing data in those other cloud workloads, like we have data in AWS as an example, or even data that's on-prem in a file server, Microsoft does have the tooling to secure that and give you that kind of single pane of glass. And then you start thinking about things like Security Copilot now has visibility to it to help you better secure it. So there is a lot of opportunity there. And obviously for the partners on the call, going through and doing design workshops on that and figuring out how are we going to build this and how are we going to implement this for a client, huge opportunity there. And again, the time is now, right? And I'll kind of end with this. I do think that if you're not going to talk to your client about it, somebody else probably is or will. And I'll just kind of leave with that.
So we're coming up to our time here. And so Lisa, Matt, I want to give each of you just a minute to maybe some final remarks and just what are the opportunities, if you can just include, what are the opportunities that you see for these Microsoft partners on the call today? So we'll start with you, Lisa.
All right. So from my perspective, I am talking to boards of directors. I'm talking to C-suites of some of the largest companies in the world, but also some mid-sized companies that realize that their businesses are being wildly disrupted by what's happening. And I do a whole conversation about what the risk is to their businesses. Their core business models are being disrupted. So what this means from an opportunity perspective is that if you can have a conversation about how you help them to both stem the loss of revenue, so that's one of the problems that they're having, is that they're losing revenue, but they're also, of course, trying to gain revenue as well. If you can have a conversation with them about how you help to support their core business and prevent this disruption from being negative, but rather turn it to a positive, if you can have those kinds of conversations about how the tech that you focus on and the tech that you support them with drives that in their business, that being able to draw that line of sight from what you do to how it helps them to succeed in the marketplace, if you can talk them through that connection, that will go a very long way for you. And when you're thinking about the way that you design your offerings, keep that mindset in mind, because what we're seeing in the marketplace is many organizations are worried about an economic turndown, are worried about inflation, other things are happening from a macroeconomic perspective. So those executives and their budgets, the people that are responsible for doling out that cash, that's where their mindset is. So when you're thinking about the offerings that you want to build, keep that mindset in, kind of top of mind for yourselves as you're building out those offerings so that you can speak to how you help them to be successful in the world that's being disrupted by artificial intelligence. And everything, I spent the first half of my career working in infrastructure, and there is nothing more important than infrastructure in enabling businesses to continually be successful in pivoting and altering the way that they support their businesses. So regardless of how far you think your offerings are away from revenue generation, I can assure you, if you think about it with that proper mindset, the way the offerings that you're bringing to the table matter. They matter to these customers, and they know that they have to respond regardless of whether they're medium-sized customers or giant customers.
Thank you. Matt?
Yeah, so I talked about data earlier and doing the data prep. Kind of in line with what Lisa just talked about. I think the time is also to start thinking about what are those business outcomes? What are those things that your clients could be doing with AI, right? And what are the things that can transform their business? What are the things with AI that can help them bring in new revenue streams, attract new clientele for them, enter new markets? Now is the time to start that conversation and figure out how do you go through and have like a workshop with them to actually conduct that conversation. Again, we're not talking large enterprise here. We're even talking the small restaurant down the street. How do you use AI to transform every business? But I want you to start thinking through, what does that kind of workshop look like? How do you start that conversation in addition to the data security topic I talked about earlier? And then the other side of this is, I hope everybody's going to be attending Microsoft Inspire, but Microsoft has already talked about Copilot for Microsoft 365. They've already talked about Windows Copilot and Security Copilot. Stay tuned to the news announcements coming from Microsoft on this front, because there's going to be a lot of opportunity for partners to go out there and have that AI conversation, and then bring Microsoft along in the journey, so you can actually deliver on some of those things that your customer wants to go do. And the last thing I'll mention here is, when you think about AI, just don't overcomplicate it. It sounds daunting, it sounds scary, it sounds complex. It can be, but just simplify it and figure out, how do you have that simplified elevator pitch for your client? And we talked about internal use. How do you guys use AI inside your own company? And maybe start there. In fact, that would probably be my call to action for everybody on this call, is how can you start utilizing this internally? And then let that grow the market opportunity for each of you.
So Jonathan, team, look, we really appreciate you guys having us here today. Look, we're the partner masters. Our job is to help simplify Microsoft for you, whether that's working with Partner Center, working to achieve solution designations, going out and getting more programs, incentives, back-end rebates, whatever it might be. If it's helping you deliver a technical solution, Matt and his team and Lisa's our AI strategist can come in and help you guys figure this stuff out. But Matt and I are also going to be in the DFW chapter next week, talking about Partner Center. So if you guys, it'll be virtual as well. It's a hybrid meeting. We'll be in Dallas, but the meeting will be virtual. So if you guys want to attend that, and then we also have a session coming up at Inspire on a 10-step masterclass on mastering Partner Center. So we'll give you a link to both of those. But we really appreciate it. I'll put the link to our website in here if any of you would like to connect with us or talk about any of our services. But Jonathan, back to you. We thank you very much.